Femke Bol just broke a Dutch 800-meter record that had stood for 34 years, and she did it in a race she still did not win. Lausanne gave her the biggest breakthrough of her new event, but the way she got there makes this story much bigger than one number. On August 21, 2026, Femke lined up for the women's 800 meters at Athletissima in Lausanne. Audrey Werro had the home crowd behind her and came in as one of the strongest 800-meter runners in the world, while Femke arrived with a different kind of pressure. She had already come within touching distance of Dutch history, and one clean race could finally push her past it. The pace was hard from the gun. Werro had made it clear before the meeting that she wanted a fast first lap, and the pacemaker took the field through 400 meters at a punishing speed. Athletissima later noted that Werro reached halfway about 2 seconds faster than Jarmila Kratochvilova had during her 1:53.28 world record race in 1983. That kind of opening lap changes everything. It gives the front runner a chance to break the field, but it also creates a huge risk because the final 200 meters can turn into a fight just to hold form. Werro accepted that risk and kept the pressure on after the pacemaker stepped aside. Saida Sehai of Ethiopia began to move closer, while Femke stayed within striking distance instead of rushing her move. The race was no longer smooth, and Werro's early effort was starting to show. That was when Femke finally began to close. Coming into the home straight, she still had enough speed left to attack. Her long experience as a world-class 400-meter runner showed up at exactly the right time as she cut into Werro's lead with every stride. For a few seconds, it looked like Femke might steal the race right at the line. Werro held on in 1:55.33. Femke finished just behind in 1:55.41, with Sehai third in 1:56.92. The gap between first and second was only 0.08 seconds, but the clock beside Femke's name carried a different kind of wind. That 1:55.41 was the fastest outdoor 800 meters ever run by a Dutch woman. The old national record belonged to Ellen van Langen, who ran 1:55.54 when she won Olympic gold in Barcelona on August 3, 1992. That mark had survived for 34 years before Femke finally moved past it in Lausanne. Van Langen's mark also carried extra weight because it was not set in an ordinary meet. It came in an Olympic final with gold on the line and then survived through several generations of Dutch middle-distance runners. Femke did not just beat an old number. She moved past a performance tied to one of the biggest moments in Dutch Olympic track history. The timing of the breakthrough made it even more dramatic. At the European Championships in Birmingham on August 14, 2026, Femke had run exactly 1:55.54. She did not break Van Langen's record that night. She tied it to the 100th. 7 days later, she found the 0.13 seconds she needed. Werro made history in the same race. Her 1:55.33 lowered Keely Hodgkinson's Lausanne meeting record of 1:55.69 from August 20, 2025. In cool conditions of around 17 to 18 degrees Celsius, the top two women produced two different records in the same finish, which shows just how high the level of this race was. For Femke, the most interesting part came after the clock stopped. She spoke about needing to trust herself more during the middle of the second lap and said she still has to learn when to push instead of protecting herself too much. That matters because this was not a race she believed she handled perfectly. There was also a tactical moment that bothered her. Femke said she was frustrated that Sehai moved past her on the back straight, even though she still felt strong. In an 800-meter race, giving up position can force a runner to react later than planned. And when the final gap is less than a tenth of a second, small choices can decide everything. That gives Lausanne a different meaning from a simple record chase. Femke did not need a perfect race to reach 1:55.41, and her own comments suggest the tactical side of the event is still catching up with her fitness. The record is already hers, but she can still point to parts of the race she wants to handle better. Werro deserves just as much credit for what happened at the front. She had won the European title in Birmingham on August 14 and said the short turnaround into Lausanne left her more tired than usual. Even so, she followed an aggressive pace, absorbed pressure from Sehai, then found enough strength to hold off Femke's late charge. That made Lausanne useful for both runners. Werro showed she could win even when the race became messy and painful, while Femke proved she could stay close enough to one of the world's best 800-meter runners to turn the final straight into a real fight. More importantly for Femke, the race showed that this move to 2 laps is no longer just about potential. The path to that moment had been surprisingly fast. Femke's first outdoor 800-meter race came in Ostrava on June 16, 2026, when she ran 1:57:13 and finished second behind Werro. It was a strong debut, but it also exposed how different the event was from the 400-meter hurdles. 5 days later, on June 21, she raced again at the FBK Games in Hengelo and won in 1:57:41. The time was not faster than Ostrava, but the race gave her something she needed just as much: experience controlling an 800 instead of simply hanging on to someone else's pace. Then came Paris on June 28, and that was the first major jump. Femke ran 1:55:60, while Werro won in 1:53:80, leaving the Dutch record only 0.06 seconds away. At that point, the move to the 800 was no longer just an experiment, because Femke was already running at national record level, only weeks after making her outdoor debut. Birmingham on August 14 proved that Paris was not a one-off. Femke matched Van Langen's mark while taking bronze behind Werro and Keely Hodgkinson. Then Lausanne completed the chase 1 week later. That sequence shows real progress without needing to turn every race into the same story. Her first competitive 800 had actually come indoors on February 8, 2026, in Metz. Femke won in 1:59:07 and set a Dutch short track record in the process. From the start of this new chapter, the signs were there that she had the engine for 2 laps, but outdoor racing would demand much more than raw fitness. The switch itself was a huge gamble. On October 10, 2025, Femke announced that she would move her focus from the 400-meter hurdles to the 800 for 2026, even though she was already a 2-time world champion in the hurdles and one of the biggest names in the sport. The difference between the two events is massive. In the 400-meter hurdles, Femke has her own lane, fixed barriers, and a rhythm she can control from start to finish. In the 800, she has to race in a pack, protect her position, judge the pace, and decide when to move, which is why every race has been part fitness test and part lesson. Werro has become the perfect measuring stick for that progress. The two have met 4 times outdoors over 800 meters in 2026, and Werro has won all 4. The gaps went from 2.68 seconds in Ostrava to 1:80 in Paris, 0.73 at the European Championships, and 0.08 in Lausanne. That pattern only needs to be said once, because it tells the whole rivalry. Femke still has not beaten Werro outdoors over 800 meters, but she has turned what looked like a clear gap in June into a near photo finish in August. Werro is not an easy target either. She ran 1:53:98 in Stockholm on June 7, then 1:53:80 in Paris on June 28, putting herself among the fastest women ever over 800 meters. She has spent 2026 proving she can win fast races, championship races, and close races, which makes Femke's progress more valuable